All right, we'll speak on something else now. Again, the volume's up again. They're hacking into my volume circuit to make me sound louder than I would normally. That's deep state scam. Again, it's the type of thing they use over the years to perpetrate the fraud. Then you know how to fool the system that they work under. But again, the system they work under is bullshit. It's been developed by fraudsters and grifters. All right, let's continue on here. That looks about right. Had to drop it down a couple more notches. So in scenarios where people are in custody, you have a base population. There are statistics. If we look at the statistics for immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, that die generally in the population, there's a per capita figure. Per 100,000 of immigrants, or per 5,000 or 10th, whatever it is, there's a certain number of immigrants that will die every year. And a certain number of legal immigrant number is probably higher than the immigrant number. There is a in custody death number. I dare say that ICE probably has the best numbers in the nation. Look at how the Democrats are presenting. They'll say it's politics, but I call it fraud. So they're presenting this idea that 25 people died in custody. But if you take 25 people and divide it into the number of people in custody, you're probably going to come up with a better than average for all types of scenarios. In custody scenarios, illegal immigrant scenarios, immigrant scenarios. So there actually should be, this is, they call evil good, good evil. ICE probably should be credited with keeping people alive. See how they twist the truth? I'm just telling you, 25 people is nothing compared to the number of people that are in custody. I mean, look at Oklahoma City. Better than Oklahoma City, but that's easy. I don't know. I think they got like serial killers at the Oklahoma City jail, correctional officers or something. But again, right. So, well, if the population's smaller, you can say, like, oh, we haven't lost an inmate in so many years. Well, how many people do you have in custody? And are you looking at, people that grew up in third world countries generally have a lower baseline of health. I mean, it's getting better now that they are here and all that, but right. You will probably find that the number of people that died in ICE custody is a lower number per capita per 100,000 or 10,000, whatever it is, than on the street. But definitely better than other correctional scenarios. Now, some small jails might do better. But again, that's a different kind of world. Yeah, it used to crack me up. If you go to like a Eastern Shore jail, it's like mom, pa, kettle jail. It's a whole different world. It's not even like a jail. I don't know about today. It might be different, but it's just like, the correctional officer is like aunt. It's almost like they don't say like aunt so-and-so, but Miss so-and-so, but it's like aunt so-and-so, uncle so-and-so. It's just, I mean, it works. I can't complain about how well they kept some of our in custody witnesses that testified. They did a great job. We ran like a certain point, it became apparent that we needed to run a mini WITSEC program out of our district as far as in custody people. We had people showing up at like organized crime bosses showing up at the cell in a different cell block, like a CO, a correctional officer would escort an organized crime figure. I mean, Baltimore fame, nothing. I don't think we had anything bigger than that. Right. New Jersey has a lot of had all the Colombian bosses and stuff. Maybe they still do, right? Q. But they would escort the drug boss to the in custody witness's cell. And it'd be a CO standing next to the drug boss, speaking with the in custody witness, of course, admonishing the individual from cooperating. So it became apparent we actually switched facilities, but we also developed a mini WITSEC program, which meant when you bring somebody in to testify, you had to run code from the jail, which we did anyway. Once we also did that as far as all transportation in reference to those type of things. But you had to run code not only because of security, but because you had to get there fast. You had to drive this immense distance to get your witnesses. And there were other jails, and it just wasn't that one. We had a series of jails out, some very far, some not so far. And of course, those correctional officers were tasked with a higher level of security than we would normally instruct. So you had to drive at a high rate of speed to get the witness in, and then get the witness back at night because you couldn't house them anywhere in the city. In fact, we jumped over a few jails just to, and decrease the probability of any type of interference. It was like we didn't even use Anne Arundel or PG or any of that. So we may have been a little quicker. So again, the way they're running that, again, I was a correctional officer, I was a marshal, so I've had different experiences in custody scenarios. Right? Marshal Service tried to get me locked up, that didn't work. I had an experience there from the other side. It was deep state. Never would have did that to me without the deep state being involved. Right? But that was all gotten rid of very quickly. Again, they tried to schoolcraft me, all that stuff, but they did it a little different in my life. But the fact is, we were trying to fix all that, and then they attacked my mother, attacked me, attacked my brother, so I couldn't get anyone. I was going to go east. Remember, we were going to fix that. So they made it so my brother wouldn't want me around. Again, spycraft. Again, CIA crown jewels being used for corrupt and criminal purpose. Foreign bosses at the helm. It's spying, man. It's espionage. No, it's politics. Oh, take out the best people in government. What happens? Who's left? Pieces of shit. Right. Like Comey, Mueller, Clapper, Brennan, Tenet, and all the rest. Not a party thing. I'm not a partyist. Neither was George Washington. Remember that thing where they tried to discredit George Washington? That's because I pointed out, as soon as I pointed out that he wasn't a partyist, all of a sudden he became anti-American. Right. That's the same thing as when I pointed out them isolating men. All of a sudden, these things called incels pop up. Think they're funny. Believe me, Brennan himself could have created those things, or at least ordered the creation of it. I'd be married, man. I've been married before I got out of the Mars. I may never even got out of the Mars service at that point. If I had a wife that I could talk to, and she'd say, "No, go to the IG." You know, if I didn't went to the IG, it may have worked out. Little did I know it was a Jewish guy from the Delaware Valley. I had no clue. They tried to kill me when I looked up because they were tracking my internet at work. Went to look up. They track all our internet, you know, right? But they were, trying to get me. So I looked up the Inspector General. I knew nothing about this. I'm like a SAP leader. I just do my job and that's it. If you're, I figure my chief and my supervisor will take care of everything else. Right. The way I take care of everybody that would be under me. I mean, I've ran quite a few details in the Marshal Service as a regular deputy, but very few years in supervising officers and agents and deputies. Right. So I take care of people that work for me. I expect to be taken care of. That's the way the system's supposed to work. So I understand how all this works. So your deaths in custody, ICE probably kept people alive if you look at the statistics, but no good deed goes unpunished these days. Man, it's not like I was trying to see what they were doing in New Mexico to make sure that the ICE wasn't compromised in New Mexico, because FBI, when I was there, was compromised, and so was DHS in New Mexico. To make sure ICE in New Mexico is doing their job, the federal population down there gets federal workforce down there gets compromised by extortion and racketeering and all that. Get chickened out. So, but it said like 25 people died in custody. I'm like, well, yeah, look at the number of people that were in custody and look at the statistics on the street of the number of immigrants that die every year and that number of people. You'll find they kept people alive. I'm not saying it's a great experience. Again, I didn't create this mess. They didn't create this mess. The people that created the mess are the ones coming against them. Now, you have to understand, a lot of these people are veterans. So again, ICE, you need to highlight the fact. Again, they'll try to say that you're just, warmongers or whatever. But, they're treating veterans very poorly and very shockingly. This is the scam. Like they have the 5 veterans that they take care of, like Vindman, some little worm. Right. Deep state worm. I mean, ICE has got tons of veterans, combat veterans that don't need their bullshit. Right. And they're serving their country the same way they served the country before. The bottom line is every person that came in through that parole program signed documentation agreeing to deportation when necessary. And it doesn't say if you maintain a job, then you'll get to stay. It says maintain a job if you can, if that's part of the program. And it's not everybody. Actually, it told them they couldn't work. Initially, I told them they were crazy. You can't bring that number of people in here and not have them work. Right. Idle minds, idle hands. Yeah. We still need a certain number of them to work once we get everything adjusted. And again, of course, administration's already spoken about certain things. So again, as far as that goes, look at the statistics. I believe that you probably, actually, I might be able to look at that. I probably could figure it out myself real quick. You probably kept immigrants alive, is what the end result. 25 is not that big of a number with all those people you have in custody. And there's two statistics. I believe you're well within in custody deaths as far as the number of people in custody, and you're also probably keeping some immigrants alive. You know, being a correctional officer and knowing how to work the crowd for, you know, security purpose. I would find things out, and people would say things to me, and even as a marshal, they'll tell you being arrested is the greatest thing that ever happened to them because they'd be dead if they didn't, if they weren't. I mean, I'm not the type of guy that says, you know, you're lucky you were arrested or anything like that. I'm not, you know, I don't put that on people. Like, you know, now you're out of that, and you know, I don't put the guilt trip on. Right. And they would just say, you know, I'm lucky that they were arrested, because if they weren't arrested, they'd be dead. So again, there's probably a certain level of truth in the immigrant community. Again, remember, the Trump administration loses some ammunition because they don't want to seem supportive of immigrants. Because they're working the anti-immigrant crowd, I guess. But, you know, and again, that is politics. You know, they're not doing anything outside what they would normally do, just kind of. Right. It's just like the gay crowd. You're stupid for not working the gay crowd. We used to work the gay crowd. And you still got Mr. Persistence. He's gay. You got Pisani. He's gay. Right. Yeah, it's just untapped vote there. Because, I mean, they probably don't like the Democrats, some of what they're saying, but there's like, well, what's the alternative? Hegseth? Sam probably says that. What's the alternative? Hegseth? But again, the key to the whole thing is people like Hegseth have a right to say what they say. People have a right to say what they say about what they say, as long as, you know, they're not over the edge on it. I mean, there's people that are anti-hetero, there's people that are anti-white. As far as stopping this, and I'll speak on this. As far as Hegseth stopping people from promotion, the idea is this: again, if he actually had identified favoritism over others, then he can do that. And it would be legitimate. I don't know what it is. Again, I'm not representing that. You have to understand, just because somebody's black doesn't mean they have a right to outmaneuver somebody who's superior in performance. Right? I mean, I agree to a limited level of something like that, but that's based upon actual articulated discrimination. And I don't think the military is actually pro-minority, pretty much. Again, we called it minority, but pro-people of color to a certain, because there's a lot of people of color in there. Right. I was stupid. I didn't know anything. I was totally asleep. So awakened is an aspect of life. So to come against that idea is kind of weird. You actually want people awakened, because then you don't have a lot of the problems that you have. It's when people think they're awakened and they're not. That's what we're running into. Well, I think there's a large gay population that is probably looking for a leader, because, you know, they don't like what they see from the Democrats. Again, the theory that I put out there is that the Democrats are using the LGBTQ world to a certain degree. And again, some people in the LGBT world are just like people that they come against. They just want, you know, they're supremacists, and they want special treatment. Well, the idea is that they feel they're used by the Democrats. That still hasn't gone away. But again, the Trump people blew that whole thing they had going, saying, you know, get away from the Democratic Party because they're just kind of using you. Right now, there is a middle world where the Democratic Party and its policies are not totally lost, but we have to be honest. And that's what I began years ago telling you, that there's charity mafias. They're embezzling those funds. They're using those funds like a communist party. If you want something, you do what we say. There's no freedom for you if you get SNAP. There's no freedom of speech for you if you get public welfare benefits. Again, there's a certain level of that we need so it doesn't cost us more money. There's a certain number of social safety net that we need to actually save money. Well, because at a certain point, when you start looking at budgeting and when you drop public assistance, social safety net below a certain level, then you start paying more for prisons. So it's like, well, wait a minute. This is, I'd rather just leave somebody in a quiet life on public assistance than actually have to arrest them and put them in prison and then pay more money for the prison to operate. Well, when people end up on the street, we've seen those sad stories where they commit a crime just to get warm. Okay, arrest me. I got to go to jail. I'm cold. I mean, someone's been out about it with the cop that shows up. Cop feels like a social worker. I'm taking the person to housing. But again, in most things, and again, some famous people have said this, but I didn't get it from, I got it from God. In most things, it's right down the middle, pretty much. 50% of this and 50% of that. We used to be bipartisan, and the idea is that Democrats would handle our issues and be a little more honest. Again, I don't care if you make money off it, but be more honest than what's going on. I mean, come on, you're just stealing from the programs and you're ruling with the programs. You want money, you do what I say. Right. And creating an army of corruption, actually. And that's not what it was made for. And that's not what you say you're doing. Again, you're out there asking for money for benefits for people that it's not going to reach. Again, using people. Well, you made trans people a target. You really did. Because you went past empowering them to oppressing others in their name. And that made them targets. But let's get back to the original point, and I'm going to get offline here now. Deaths in custody, as far as ICE, I'm sure they're well within better than average. And maybe the best in the nation. I don't know. You have to look at the numbers. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.